Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're hitting some peak Spielberg. It's 1993, and we're here to talk about Jurassic Park, and we have Matt here, one of my best friends and frequent collaborators. Matt, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And if you haven't tuned in to Welcome to the Wasteland before, we have 3 segments. We start with the coming attractions for the week of this release, which is August 12th. Then we get into our feature film, Jurassic Park, and then we'll get some recommendations for all you lovely folks listening. Now, getting into our coming attractions for August 12th, it's August. So it's like random shit that comes at the end of the summer. And even this particular week's one of the weaker ones. So what would you like to talk about, Matt?
Let's see. I guess let's go with TV. There's a show called Reservation Dogs on Hulu. It is fantastic. It is both funny and poignant, and it made me think about a group that is incredibly underrepresented, and I never knew that there was like a story that could touch on so many different things that I personally couldn't identify with, and yet they make it effortless in terms of the way that they make things relatable and then also informative. And because like the actors and the people behind the camera like are of kind of like that group as well, so it's, I have to imagine, it's incredibly like respectful and like authentic. It's fantastic show. Deals with mental health. Deals with just so many things. It's awesome. So it just got its season 2 release. What was that, on Tuesday?
So the episodes are coming out on Wednesday. By the time this episode releases, the first 2 episodes would have come out the previous week, and the 3rd episode will come out. So I've watched the first 2 episodes as we're recording this, and the first episode gets really intense. And not gonna lie, the other episode has one of the funniest scenes, I think, in the show so far.
Excellent.
And it 100% has to do with the older gentleman in the neighborhood, including Wes Tootie, who... love Wes Tootie. But it's important to point out, because we have Sterling Harjo, who is one of the creators, but also created this with Taika Waititi.
Boom.
So, Taika Waititi's... it definitely has his kind of spirit about it, but much more Hunt for the Wilder People and Boy and Jojo Rabbit feel than like Thor Love and Thunder feel. Which I feel like Thor's just him just going full blown, we're going to have a goofy fun time. This legitimately, like, this reminds me of perfect tone of like Hunt for the Wilder People, where it's like, there's some crazy stuff that goes on, but it's also really emotional and also absolutely hilarious. Recently we watched Hunt for the Wilder People. I showed Haley.
Nice.
When we were up in Boston.
Very well.
So, what's behind the other door? Vegetables? Why would there be vegetables behind the other door? It's Jesus. Jesus behind the other door.
There we go.
That whole entire funeral scene is hilarious. But Reservation Dogs is amazing. So it's the 2nd season, so make sure to go back and watch the first one. Hulu, FX on Hulu is just out of this world. Mm-hmm. Between this, What We Do in the Shadows, Atlanta.
How was The Old Man?
That was intense. Like, Jeff Goldblum. We're about to talk about Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Bridges.
He's not that old.
Yeah. Well...
Actually, how old is Goldblum?
Jeff Goldblum's almost 70.
Damn. Okay.
I wasn't joking when I called him Zaddy earlier.
Zaddy.
He was reading tweets about himself at a concert that I saw him do. And he just like, this person called me Zaddy. And I'm just like, this guy right here. Now, Jeff Bridges and John Lithgow are amazing in that show. Oh my god, it's some amazing acting, and it has a really intense story, and I was really impressed. I think it's a really good return for Jeff Bridges after his battle with cancer. So, like, this is his first thing back, and now he's killing it. He's doing a really good job. So, yeah, FX on Hulu's killing it. And we're getting the last season of Atlanta in September.
Trailer came out for that, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, a lot of great stuff. Season 4 of What We Do in the Shadows, side note, is some of the best of the show. Oh my god. All I'm going to say is the night market. The night market episode's amazing. But it's honestly, it's not a slow week in terms of releases. It's not the most interesting weekend in terms of releases. So, like, you have a high concept thriller, Fall, which is about two women on top of an antenna. You have that. I think the closest, most interesting thing is Emily the Criminal with Aubrey Plaza, which I actually got to see. Thumbs up. And then Jamie Foxx and Snoop Dogg fighting vampires on Netflix. But my pick is Inu-Oh, because I really appreciate a good anime release, and this looked really interesting, and some of the other films that this director's done are very vibrant and bold, so I'm like, you know what, this is probably the most interesting movie that's probably coming out this weekend. Nice. Might be checking it out with my friend Kevin.
Nice.
And if not, I'll be checking it by myself. Actually, probably with Jess, because at least I don't think she'll say no to that one. She did say no to Jurassic World Dominion.
That was
a good choice. Yeah. Because in this dojo, we're not going to talk about any Jurassic World, because not worthy. We're only talking about Spielberg on this show up until January, when I don't know who will be next. We'll be finding out this fall when I do a whole new version of my tournament to decide. But you got to wait a couple months. But anyway, so it's August. Sometimes there's some really interesting releases like Guardians and stuff like that came out in August. Other times it's just, does this look like halfway decent that they could potentially get a decent... Because, like, I feel like August was like, hey, this movie looks like it could make a good $40-45 million opening weekend. Let's dump it in August. But in the land of COVID, you have movies that would normally make $90 million making $40-45 million opening weekend. So, like, I don't know what this stuff's going to make. Especially after DC, League of Super Pets made $23 million. Who knows? Top Guns could still be in the top 5 by the time this comes out. So
that's not the wildest thing that's happened this week in terms of DC news.
So, shameless plug to to Wasteland Talks. I will be having a whole video with a bunch of my Sif Pop crew coming on to talk about should Warner Brothers Discovery reboot the DCEU at this point. Because I think they already kind of made that decision.
I think it's like full steam ahead. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they just want to get Aquaman and Shazam and Black Adam out of the way, and then...
Update on Flash? Or no? Because like I keep
seeing... They said it's releasing.
Okay. In theaters?
Yep.
Okay.
Apparently, Ezra Miller, they have completely turned into a body armor wearing, gun wielding cult leader. Okay. Why isn't Warner Brothers making a movie about them? Honestly.
The story's not over yet. That's why.
I swear, once that story's over, they're going to make something out of it. See, they're going to feed off the publicity. This is why they have not canceled this movie. Oh, man. Insanity. Just insane. But we're here to talk about Jurassic Park. And Matt looked up something interesting that I want him to bring up.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to read it?
Sure. Yeah, he's going to read a quote from James Cameron. While you're bringing that up, though... Oh, you already have it up. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. We don't need to kill time. Matt has it. He's ready to go.
All right, so I was on Reddit, so Our Movies, fantastic subreddit. It basically had James Cameron talking about the fact that even though he really wanted to be the one to have the rights of Jurassic Park, Spielberg beat him out for them. I guess like the adaptation rights or whatever. By only a few hours. But what he saw when he saw Jurassic Park, he said, "Wow, you injected so much more majesty and wonder into this project versus what I would have done, which was scare the hell out of people."
Nasty.
Yeah.
His exact words were nasty, right?
Yeah, he said his sensibility was right for that film. I'd have gone further, nastier, much nastier. Hilarious. And he's...
You know, all the wonderful things that James Cameron could be doing instead of making four, we got 4 Avatar sequels.
Also that, I mean, let's see if those films are nasty in terms of the box office. They won't be.
I don't, like... We're going to have to find out when December rolls around, honestly, because I...
Do you like the first one? Do you like the first Avatar?
I own it. I think it's a fine movie. But, like... I think the special effects are what really drives the attention, because, like, it has a very basic plot. Some of the dialogue's trash. Unobtainium. Are you shitting me? Dumb. And then why do they keep trying to make Sam work? Actually, you know what? Back in 2009, 2010, why did they have to keep trying to make Sam Worthington work? I'll have to admit, he's put in some interesting performances lately. Like, Under the Banner of God, that Mormon show on Hulu, FX on Hulu, with Andrew Garfield and Gil Birmingham. He's great in it. Him and Wyatt Russell are unnerving and creepy. Especially, like, unnerving and creepy is definitely Sam Worthington in that show.
It's a good show. It's a very good show.
But, like, the idea that James Cameron could have made Jurassic Park tells me that 100% would have been more of, like, what Michael Crichton originally imagined with his book. And it's interesting because Michael Crichton wrote the screenplay for this movie, and then it got rewritten because, like, Michael Crichton laid down all the groundwork, and then his last name's Koepp, Koepp, I guess, reworked it to make it a Spielberg movie. But, like, there's still horror in it. Because that's the thing. Spielberg has done horror. He made Jaws. There's a reason that Jordan Peele made Nope, which is basically Jaws with aliens. So, like... And he knows how to make tension, but there's also a sense of wonder. And I think that's the reason why that's the only film, for the most part, in this franchise that really stands out as something truly special. And I know Spielberg was going for something different in Lost World, which I'll be talking about in 2 episodes, because even from the start they show that shot of Ian Malcolm yawning. The wonder's gone. That's the point. He's trying to do something different. But, like, here, there's the wonder, and that's what really grabs you. But, so Spielberg's coming off a Hook, which is overall a box office misfire, and a critical one. Critics were really not happy about Hook. And the movie before that was Always, which is one of the most unknown Spielberg movies, which is a fantasy romance.
Gotcha.
So, like, first act, great. Second act, what? Third act, kind of brought it back. But, like, that was a weird time for Spielberg in the late 80s. Like, if you take out Last Crusade, like, lift that out of there, mid to late 80s into early 90s were a weird time for Spielberg with The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, Always, and then Hook. But then 1993 rolls around, and he makes all the money with Jurassic Park and wins all the Oscars with Schindler's List, and was back, like, bam, right on top.
Yeah.
And this is, like, peak Spielberg, and both of those movies represent what Spielberg could really do as a director. But, Matt, why did you want to come on to this episode specifically?
So, I like dinosaurs. I think that they're fantastic. I like dinosaurs and I like Godzilla. So when you were going to do Spielberg, I knew I had to be at least one of the people that were going to talk about just this whole Like this whole like, do you remember when you first saw like Jurassic Park? Maybe like sorry, you and I were what 7 or 8 when Jurassic Park 2 came out. I'm assuming probably like you did what I did, which was watch the second one inside of theaters, which scared the hell out of me, and then watch the first one, which
Oh
scared the
no!
hell out of me.
Oh, I didn't watch these things until I was a little bit older because it scared the shit out of me.
Got you. Yeah, I remember.
Between that and The Mummy, like
yeah.
Lost World, Jurassic Park, and The Mummy scarred me for a while.
No, I remember sitting in the theater watching the second one, and even though it was terrifying, having an awesome time, and then like a few weeks later, getting the VHS, bringing it home to see the first one, and man, the first time you see the T-Rex, and it's like attacking those two kids, and the only thing that's in between them and its mouth is that windshield.
Yeah,
it's both fantastic when you see it because it's a robotic dinosaur that looks so real, that has detail almost to the point where it's kind of like, I have to imagine there was someone that said, do we have to do this every single scale? Yeah, screw it, yeah, why not, let's do it. Like, that's fantastic. Like, it's fantastic, and then also it's terrifying because the music, the peril in terms of not only do you have like people in danger, but also kids specifically in danger. Like, the whole thing was a wild ride. Every single time I watch it, it's like it is a timeless movie in my opinion.
it's a great watch over on Netflix. The movies that made that's it, right?
The movies that made us.
Yeah, the Jurassic Park episode is fascinating because Phil Tippett, who was like the king of stop motion animation at the time, because he had just done RoboCop, and he was supposed to do Jurassic Park. And then they're like, stop motion, what about animatronics? And just blew up the whole entire special effects industry. It was revolutionary. And even the CGI shots in this film are still really impressive. Like, especially most of the raptor shots in that kitchen sequence, it's hard to tell sometimes when they do switch between CGI and animatronics because it's so well done. But the thing is, it all comes down to the direction and the cinematography, because the way they use the lighting makes them feel a part of the shot. When you watch like a Marvel movie today, and I'm going to pick on Marvel because of their just bland look to a lot of their movies, is because the CGI is so noticeable because it's all saturated with light. Kind of like us right now. Like, the thing is, like, I have some intense soft boxes in here, so, like, you notice, like, this is some intense light on screen, but, like, a lot of those films today with all those green screens, they don't use the texture of lighting. And you watch something like E.T., and you know Spielberg knows how to work with the cinematographer to maximize shadow and lighting. You watch the first scene in this movie, and the lighting of those spotlights through all of like the bars coming through, and there's just like jets of light shooting out from places. That whole sequence is
disorienting.
It's disorienting, and it's what I don't think enough people give Spielberg credit for, is that he could do horror. And like, that is a terrifying sequence with amazing visuals, and like he knows not to tip his hat. By accident he did it in Jaws, where it's just like he couldn't show the shark because it didn't work. Here he's consciously hiding things, and you don't see the raptors in that first scene. You definitely shouldn't see the raptors in that first scene. You should not see anything until he wants you to, and then you have iconic moments. Like, that first time you see the whole T-Rex in the rain, and that scene is awe-inspiring. The amount of build-up he does before they show the first dinosaur, from Sam Neill's reaction to him grabbing Laura Dern and turning her head, and it doesn't like quickly cut to the dinosaur. She slowly lifts up out of her seat. He's building tension. He knows how to milk the moment. And he's given John Williams plenty of time to build and build and build up that score, all leading up to little Richard Attenborough being like, welcome to Jurassic Park. And just like, bam! That sequence is one of the most iconic things in movies.
Yeah, I like what you were talking about, the build-up, because so let's say like Godzilla movies, for example, even like either the recent ones or even ones from the 90s or 80s, a lot of times the human characters are kind of like, they make you feel like you want to like pull out some kind of remote control from your pocket and then just fast forward all of their scenes and to get to either like the action or the creatures or things like that. The build up to this movie, it's almost like, it's not even like a build up in terms of tension. It's just kind of just establishing like who these people are, and then you care so much about them throughout the entire story, and then they use like these character traits that were referenced or built upon in that beginning throughout the movie. Like Ellie Sattler, whatever, is a scientist from start to finish, and like you can definitely see that by how she talks and how she interacts and the arguments that she makes when she's sitting across from Hammond and explaining that like no, this is a flea circus. Like you don't understand like what's happening.
You picked these plants because they look good, but they're poisonous. They could kill these dinosaurs. What a plant! That came right back like 2 scenes later.
It's fantastic. Like all the characters. I remember you were saying before we were watching, this movie has not only great characters but also great like side characters as well, like supporting people.
So
this movie wouldn't work as well as it does if it was only like if the heights were only when the dinosaurs were on screen and then everything else was kind of just blah. Yeah.
And like speaking of Godzilla, because like I've watched a lot of Godzilla movies in my life too. That 2014 Godzilla, I think it's Cardinal Sin is killing off Bryan Cranston because like he was the most interesting human character, and I'm sorry, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character is not that interesting. I don't mind that they don't show Godzilla for the vast majority of the movie, because, my God, when he shows up at the end, that is amazing. Oh, my God.
Or even, like, before then, at the airport scene.
Just, like, the little teases. That's great, but you have to have the humans who bring us in. That's why the first Godzilla worked. And this is because you have the core 3. You have Sam Neill, you have Alan Grant, who set up from the beginning. He's not the biggest fan of kids. He has that whole entire sequence with that snooty kid, which that brings so many things back to make some of the best scenes in the movie in terms of how raptors hunt. And I'll get to Muldoon in a second. But Sam Neill, like, is so great as Alan Grant too, because like he's awkward at times because he's forced to be with these kids the whole movie. Well, sorry, you know what? It's only half the movie. It's like the second half of the movie. There's a lot of setup to this movie, but you don't care because you're just enjoying the hell out of this ride with these characters. You did a great job talking about Ellie. I don't really feel like I need to add much to that. And then, of course,
yes.
You have Jeff Goldblum, who's being the most Jeff Goldblum-y in this movie, maybe except for Thor Ragnarok. Because him as Grand Master is just like, if Jeff Goldblum had unlimited power and he was just like this ancient person, he would be the Grand Master. But here, Ian Malcolm is such an amazing character, and you could definitely tell why they made him the main character in the second movie, because he was the coolest character. He's a cool rock star scientist. But he has some of the best dialogue, and it isn't just because it's Jeff Goldblum doing his whole Jeff Goldblum thing. Because, you know, he has like the he has the moments where he's just like, oh, your scientists worried too much about if they could, but didn't worry about if they should. Great line. Are you trying to say that female dinosaurs are going to reproduce together? It's like, no. I'm saying life finds a way. And it does because what was their dumbass move? They didn't even think about the frog DNA they were putting in, which those frogs can reproduce asexually.
Mm-hmm.
Life finds a way, also because people are dumb. That's also a theme of this movie.
Because money. Like, anything you see on screen, why? Because money.
And and John Hammond is the perfect example of somebody who had a grand vision and search for more money took over. Even the lawyer character is a fun time. And then he gets eaten on the toilet. And just like, nope, goodbye. But then the side characters are amazing too. Nedry, Wayne Knight, Newman from Seinfeld. Like, the 90s were like time for him to really do his thing. It's like, Dodson over here. Nobody cares.
His little Velma from Scooby-Doo moment. My glasses.
Yeah.
Where are my glasses? Yeah.
Oh, and that whole entire scene with that frilled dinosaur that I always forget what the name of it is.
Dilophosaurus.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Spitting tar, acid stuff in his face. That scene gets me every time. And Spielberg's a great director because he doesn't have to show you a whole bunch, because when Nedry dies, all you hear is, Wayne Knight screaming. Ah! Like that is perfect. The Jeep shaking back and forth. You don't need anything else more than that. Mr. Arnold, Samuel L. Jackson, incredibly memorable just from just the tiny moments of him being stern, intense. He cares. He wants to get them out of there. And said, hold on to your butts. And then Muldoon, who we get from the very first scene, and Shooter! And then, of course, Clever Girl. That whole sequence, that is some of the best planting. Chekhov's gun in movies when Alan Grant traumatizes that kid at the beginning, which is hilarious. That scene's intense because Sam Neill's performance is so intense, but it's hilarious because that kid got put in his place. But
yeah, I love that when he ends it with so show a little respect. It's almost kind of like he's talking to everybody that's watching the movie, like, show a little respect.
Honestly, yeah, and trying to build, it's telling the audience you should be finding wonder in this too, because you take for granted what movies can do. No human being has ever seen a dinosaur. You've seen them now, and that's crazy.
And we hear them. Like, the first time you hear that T-Rex roar, that's so memorable. Like, if I were to close my eyes and someone were to play that, like, if anyone were to do that, like, you would know exactly what movie that's from. Like, there's no mistaking that.
And the raptor call, too. And they make that such a big part of Jurassic Park 3 with the whole... Yeah, the... And it's the sound... And there's no wonder this movie won for special effects, sound mixing, and sound editing. It won those Oscars. And then Steven Spielberg won a bunch more with Schindler's List. It was the year of Spielberg. And this movie also made $914 million at the worldwide box office, which I looked it up is $1.8 billion in today's money.
It hits all the quadrants, kids, like young adult, like everybody. If you're a horror fan, if you're a sci-fi fan, if you are just like action and adventure, like, it hits so many boxes. Every single dollar is incredibly well deserved.
And it's because Spielberg uses what Spielberg does best to elevate the book. And I'm saying that because the thing is, it's like Michael Crichton is a very technical writer. Like, all the science and all that stuff is very well done in the book. The horror is really well done in the book. But Spielberg takes those things and then takes it to the next level. There's a ton of exposition in Michael Crichton books because, he goes into horrific detail sometimes of all the science and the technical stuff, and sometimes makes it a harder read for some things. I remember the Andromeda Strain being one that was really dense, but Spielberg is able to elevate it by adding in what Spielberg does great, which is that sentimentality and that sense of wonder into his films. He knows how to direct. He doesn't get enough credit for being an auteur director. And the way that, like, the Nidri death scene, Muldoon's death scene is amazing. How he shoots that scene of, like, Muldoon, the close-up of Muldoon's face, the close-up of Muldoon getting his rifle, or whatever the hell that is. It's like some crazy shotgun together, and he's looking, and the camera's panning, you see the eye, and then it pans to a perpendicular angle to Muldoon, and then that raptor face comes through, reverse cut, clever girl, and then he quick tries to pull his gun up, and then the raptor's on top of him, but you have those leaves there that obscures, like, the horrible thing that's probably happening behind it, but you get enough of, like, you hear him screaming, you have all of that, you don't...
Oh, I was going to say that I really like the fact, before I feel like I'm going to forget, I like the fact that in this movie, there are really awesome choices to obscure or to hide something, where it's like, oh, okay, like, that's incredibly intentional. So any time where it was kind of like a wide shot, like, that would be, like, a moment where you would see, like, some kind of, like, a CG effect, but then, like, the close-ups would be, like, when there's some kind of, or, like, animatronic, or when... Newman's character is, like, getting eaten. Like, I feel like there are a lot of moments where the action could have been corny or silly, or like, that's somebody in a suit, or that's a dude, like, wrestling with a toy, but because of leaves, or because of rain, or because of night, like, just tiny random little things make, like, work. He makes that stuff work for the movie, and it's effective. It's actually really disturbing.
Yeah, and, you know, you don't see Mr. Arnold die, but you find his arm.
Exactly, yeah. You don't have to show everything.
No, you don't have to show Samuel L. Jackson being eaten by raptors. All you need to do is, like, that arm, and that is such... The arm falls down, and then the raptor sticks its head right through, and you're like, bam, gotcha.
Boom, roasted.
Boom, roasted. Boom, goes dynamite. But then you have the sequence at the end of the film in the kitchen. Great use of camera. There's that one great camera trick where it looks like the raptor's going to get the young girl, but then rams into the cabinet because it's all stainless steel cabinets and it's all reflective. Such a great little choice. And then, of course, the climax of the raptors in the main lobby, and then the T-Rex showing up, wrecking the two raptors, and then, you know, the big Jurassic Park banner falling down and it roaring, and you're just like, that's Jurassic Park right there. It just, there's so many iconic images, iconic lines, the memes from this movie.
Shirtless Jeff Goldblum.
Shirtless Jeff Goldblum is an icon. Jeff Goldblum is an icon. And then you have the characters. So many of them are so iconic. And then John Williams. Just the literally walked out at my wedding to the Jurassic Park theme because my wife wanted to.
Walking herds.
They travel in herds.
Yeah, they travel in herds, yeah.
They travel in herds. All the lines that, like, I was facetiously doing it the whole entire movie. It's like, he said the thing! And then, of course, when the T-Rex roars at the end, I said, she said the thing! Because I was just having fun at that point. Because, like, you know, I can't even tell you how many times I've watched this movie. And I'm sure you can't tell how many times you've watched this movie.
Oh, yeah. This was one of the VHSs that actually broke in my VCR, or my parents' VCR, and I got in trouble. Because it started to spit out. You remember, like, the tape when it would, like, mess up, and then it started just vomiting, like, tape. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. DVDs were awesome.
Yep.
Awesome improvement.
Indeed. Not only because of the visual quality, but, like, just that's a pain in the butt. All those tapes, cassettes, all that nonsense.
I need to rewind this before I watch it. What?
Records have come back. Cassettes will never come back because they're just a pain in the butt, and you don't want to deal with that crap. But Jurassic Park is my number 2 Spielberg film behind Last Crusade because that movie is just special to me. And there's not many things in cinema that I love more than the dynamic between Indiana and Henry Jones Sr. But this movie is perfect. It does everything. It mixes genres. The technical aspects are off the charts. The music, the writing, the story, the characters, the performances, just everything about it. This is Spielberg elevating genre films to a point where like people had to pay attention to this kind of science fiction horror film. And it was so special, and that's why it's so beloved today, and which is also why they're milking it dry.
Mm-hmm.
God.
When you watch like this movie, it's actually a really smart. Aside from the fact that it looks awesome and it's funny and it's scary, it's also a really smart movie, and there's like so much like emotional depth. Like so, even when Ellie is talking to Hammond and he's describing like. He's like telling her why this was important for him to make, or he wanted to show people something authentic and real to the point where it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just
too
like,
real.
Yeah, like too real, almost like another like wonder of the world. Like that is so awesome, and it is so lost in the more recent movies. Like,
I know I said I was not going to talk about Jurassic World, but now I have to.
I mean, like the messaging is either like really kind of like, just like heavy-handed. Like what was that? Fallen Kingdom, like environment good.
Human clones.
Yeah. Or
that lot like that just.
Or Dominion. She gave birth to herself. I wanted to scream, sigh.
That Tony Stark, like that Robert Downey Jr. meme of him just like...
Yeah.
is me watching Dominion and Fallen Kingdom. And even Jurassic World, it's a big dumb movie. And that's what makes a difference between Jurassic Park, which is an extremely intelligent movie, well crafted and everything, and Jurassic World's just a big CGI blob fest. And it has no soul. And Chris Pratt, Grady is not an interesting character. Don't remember Bryce Dallas Howard's character's name. She's not an interesting character either. There's no deep, meaningful characters. Like, the closest thing that I felt like an authentic performance was, like, the owner guy who winds up dying in his helicopter. Because he was just slightly quirky. And, like, that was the only thing. And, like, everyone else felt so just contrived. And then you have this giant gene-spliced dinosaur fighting a raptor riding a T-Rex. And then it gets its neck snapped by Randy Orton jumping out of a pool, RKOing it out of nowhere. I literally turned to Jess in the theater and was like, RKO out of nowhere. It was an RKO vine at the end of the movie. I'm just like, no.
Because I feel like these movies, I think it was Chris Stuckman that said these more recent movies did a disservice to dinosaurs in the sense where, like, in their universe, it's not just these are animals, but there are good and bad dinosaurs and they're villains, and like you turn them into humans too much, and it's really cartoonish. I feel like the takeaway from Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park, at the very end when the T-Rex is fighting the
raptor,
fighting the raptors, like it's supposed to be kind of like wow and scary and like oh man, but it's just supposed to be like nature needs to be respected. And I feel like the takeaway that they took from that, instead of what I'm hoping that was supposed to be the takeaway, what they took from that was spectacle above everything.
If we have all these dinosaurs fight each other, the issue is exactly what you said, and you put that perfectly, is like, this is not about dinosaurs fighting each other. It's about the human beings leaving and letting nature take its course. Because who's the apex predator? The T-Rex, which is why it attacks the raptors. It's just nature being nature, and the point of the movie is that we leave the island to let nature be nature. And no, that is not like... If I had to watch another Jurassic World movie try to get me to love this damn raptor named Blue, I don't give a crap. And now, Blue has a baby. I don't give a crap about that baby either. Sorry. Like, that's not the point of Jurassic Park. We're not supposed to be falling in love with these dinosaurs. We're supposed to be in awe of the fact that they're there. And I think the thing that captures it so well is, like, when I love... And, like, just a scene full of just dialogue at each other is at that dinner table where Hammond's like, well, if I put a bunch of condors on an island, it's like, no. We're not talking about something that was destroyed by deforestation, or we're talking about dinosaurs that were selected for extinction. They had their shot. And that is so profound because it's like we are messing with the laws of nature. And it isn't like us trying to fix our own mistakes. We weren't even part of the equation. And then the whole thing with God creates man, God creates dinosaur, God destroys dinosaur, God creates man, man destroys God. Dinosaur destroys man? That whole sequence, I'm just like, this movie has no business like scratching the surface of like that kind of deep thought, but it does.
It's very philosophical. It's like it begs you to be responsible, like a responsible scientist or a responsible person. Like it begs you to maybe just like think about the consequence of something before you do it, because butterfly effect, like one domino falls and it's kind of like, oh crap, this is out of my control and I'm the one that caused it. Like, yeah.
One little ripple can change all of existence. And you mentioned that one great line that Hammond says to Nedry about his, like, I don't expect people to be whatever for their mistakes, but I...
Oh, yeah. I don't blame people for their mistakes, but I want them to pay... But I do expect them to pay for them. Yeah.
So it's just like... Which is the irony.
Yeah, because like at that point, he's like blind to that.
He is completely blind to the fact that he is making the biggest mistake out of anybody in this whole entire thing. And what I love too is that all the currents of like greed and capitalism in this film, because this exists because of it. Stuff goes sideways because of it. Because Nedry felt like he wasn't getting paid enough money. So he sends the park offline and puts everybody's lives at risk. And it's all down to greed. And, you know, this film is just so deep, full of all kinds of philosophy and themes. And it just has everything. It really does, and which is why I think it's a perfect movie.
Yeah, I do respect the fact that Cameron said, like, if I were to have made this movie... it wouldn't have been something. It wouldn't have been something that was like as beautiful as what like we ended up getting. Like I feel like if anything, if Cameron would have made this movie, it probably would have been kind of like just like a regular monster thing, potentially.
Well, but like I believe he would have made a great film because he has elevated the Terminator and Aliens and stuff like that. Like James Cameron at that point was at the peak of his... Like, this would have been his follow-up to T2 Judgment Day.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, so I see that back then. So maybe it would have been forgettable.
It would have been something that would be a different film. And like he said, it wouldn't have the same dimensions to it that Spielberg was able to add to it. And, you know, I think it takes a lot for Cameron, who is kind of a cocky jerk at times, to be like, I get it. He was the right one for this movie. He would have added something I couldn't have done. Because you don't watch a James Cameron movie to feel that sense of wonder. Because James Cameron could have 100% delivered on all those technical aspects and would have been part of doing all the special effects because that's where he started. But I don't think... Because, like, I do think it would have been a more faithful adaptation to Crichton's novel, which is a monster book that is very technical science fiction.
Would you recommend people read it?
I wouldn't recommend it if you're hoping to get the same exact experience out of the movie, but if you do love hard science fiction and horror books, yes.
Gotcha.
They definitely, like... some of the characters are definitely very different. The fates of some of the characters are very different. But, like, it's a very interesting thing because, like, besides the Andromeda Strain, like, he wrote Congo. I have a sinking feeling he wrote Westworld. Like, the original film screenplay. Or if Westworld started as a book, I'm trying to remember. But... yeah, because Michael Crichton died in 2008. He was only 66. The Andromeda Strain, Binary, The Terminal Man, The Great Train Robbery, Congo, Sphere, Jurassic Park, Disclosure, The Lost World, Prey. So I guess I thought he had something to do with... he wrote and directed the film Westworld. So, like, if you've watched the original film Westworld, it's very much more of, like, a Terminator type situation. I think it's a good movie. It's just, don't expect the same thing that you get out of the show, Westworld. Because, like I said, it's much more like a Terminator situation. Like, Yul Brynner's Man in Black basically is just a Terminator coming to kill people. And you have two main characters trying to get the hell out of Dodge. The show is so much deeper and has, like, gone well beyond anything that Crichton did. But I think Steven Spielberg took a book that was great in its own right and just elevated to a whole different level and created one of the best science fiction films ever.
Yeah.
Period. Matt, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think this movie's fantastic. I think that The Lost World is also fantastic. When you watch
I don't get why people say Jurassic World's better than Lost World, Jurassic Park.
No, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No,
that doesn't make any sense to me. I think that... I think I'm going to go on Spotify later on today and I'm going to listen to that theme. That's what I think.
There you go.
That's what I think. No, fantastic movie. I'm floored every single time that I watch it, especially the T-Rex scene, because I thought T-Rex... when I was a kid, I thought T-Rex was the coolest thing ever. Still do. Kind of, sort of. Yeah, just fantastic movie. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And now we got recommendations. So, Matt, what do you want to tell all the wonderful people watching?
Let me see. What would I recommend people watch? What was that thing that we were talking about earlier, Shane?
You wanted to tell people about The Black Phone.
The Black Phone. Okay. The Black Phone. The Black Phone was first a short story inside of a collection of short stories written by the son of Stephen King. Mm-hmm. And this movie, the screenplay is based on this short story. This movie's fantastic. This movie is weird. This movie is violent. Though I would say that this is going to be odd. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I feel like it could have went further than it did in certain ways to kind of explain. No, never mind. Yeah. But fantastic movie. It's very, very high in terms of like attention. Like it'll give you like an ulcer. At least it made me feel that way. Like it was hard to watch.
Scott Derrickson's a great director.
Remember the lock, the combination lock? Mm-hmm. That's all I'll say. Yeah.
And one of my favorite uses of a Pink Floyd song in any movie.
Mm. Oh yeah.
I write off Dark Side of the Moon, which I don't think I've ever seen heard anyone use that song in a movie, and it was used so perfectly. It has like the and just the feel to it, the vibe to it, the aesthetic to it, the shocking brutality of it. especially even before, like, Ethan Hawke doesn't even show up until, like, a decent chunk into the movie, and he's so disturbing. I think it's a really quality film, and you know what? I'm glad it exists, because it might not have if he stayed on Multiverse of Madness. So, you know, we got Multiverse of Madness from Sam Raimi, and we got The Black Phone from Scott Derrickson, so there we go.
Excellent.
I have a couple recommendations. So one of my movies that I watched recently was I rewatched The Wind Rises, which is Hayao Miyazaki's last film, which is a much more mature film. Like, it's not high fantasy, it's not stuff like that. It is about a man who created planes. And it is a beautiful, beautiful film. And there's impressive visuals. There's a lot of Italian people. Hayao Miyazaki had an interesting fascination with Italian people. Porco Rosso. But this is, I feel like, a wonderful way to wrap up his career, because, you know, it's just another beautiful film. Also, the fact that, like, the English voice cast, at one point when you have Werner Herzog just popping up in the film, I'm just like, yep, there you go. It has I listened to the English version of it, and the English voice cast is really great in it. Viva Las Vegas, which is coming off of my watch list because I'm doing an episode of Rowan in the Wasteland on that, which is the Elvis film, which I had no idea what the hell it was about. All I know is, of course, he was going to sing Viva Las Vegas in it. He's a Grand Prix racer, and he's falling in love with a performer played by Anne Margaret. So it's a love story, there's car races, and, you know, Elvis singing Viva Las Vegas. So if you wanted all those things, you got them. It's only like an hour and 25 minutes, too. It's a pretty short movie. Anne Margaret's great. Elvis, I think, does a really fine job for... Because, like, it's not like he's the world's greatest actor. But, like, he really does his performance as well. And then the new movie that I wanted to recommend was Fire of Love, which is a new documentary about the craft couple who were volcanists who died investigating volcanoes. And a lot of the stuff that we know today about volcanoes was because they put their lives on the line and got obnoxiously close to erupting volcanoes. And this film is one of the most visually striking documentaries I've ever watched. The footage that they got of these volcanoes is insane. And it's also a really interesting love story, too. And this is one of the best documentaries I've watched in a long time, so highly recommend. You're going to have to search it out, though. Like, I had to drive to King of Prussia just to watch it. It is playing in Philly now. It was either drive out to King of Prussia to see it at a Regal, where I could, like, not have to deal with inner city Philadelphia crap. Or you could go into Philly if you're in this area, or, you know, it's probably showing in some major cities and stuff like that, too. Because, of course, if you're in LA and New York, you're spoiled and you always get these movies. Screw you.
Alamo Draft House. I love going to that place.
I've never been to an Alamo Draft House.
It's really nice. I saw Dune and I saw 8th grade there.
Nice.
Also, it's kind of interesting because when I saw Dune, I got a milkshake and they, without me asking for it, put cinnamon spice on it. I was like, nice. I like this. Give us the spice.
Destroy House Atreides.
Also that.
Let the spice run. Let the spice flow.
Fantastic.
I'm glad I got to see that with Joe, honestly. I just wish I didn't see it with two babies screaming the whole entire time. Because that's going back to the movies, people. But going back to the movies is great. And Jurassic Park, I am sure at some point next year, will get a re-release because it's its 30th anniversary.
Nice.
Disgusting. Why is this out 30 years? Because E.T.'s out this weekend that this video is coming out. Re-releasing that, and I feel like another Spielberg was getting E.T.'s getting re-released, and of course Avatar is. Because how many times does Avatar have to get re-released? Like every 2 years. Or it feels like every year at this point. But That is another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. On my next episode, Paige is going to be joining me for Schindler's List. And now for something completely different.
Wow.
And then in 2 episodes, I'll be having Luke from Sif Pop joining me for Lost World. Because yes, it's a dinosaur sandwich with the Holocaust in between. What an interesting time for Steven Spielberg. But, Matt, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anything you'd like to shamelessly plug to the people before we wrap up?
Scanning. Not at the moment. What I'll do is that I'll probably make a comment under your video if
Okay.
pops up.
There you go. But thank all of you for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.
Bye, guys.